Hi there. I think many have heard this expression before. A person builds their own destiny, and therefore no one except themselves will make them happy. No one except you is responsible for your happiness, and only the one who has conquered themselves, who conquered their fear, their laziness, and their insecurity, wins in this life. After all, the life of every person in its own way is worthy of making a film about. And I think that there will be a lot of interesting and instructive things about how to do or how not to do it. Well, our next story took place several years ago and originates in the city of Portland, Oregon. This guy named Tom was an ordinary student from a simple family. His father was a truck driver and his mother was a primary school teacher. But be that as it may, he was very purposeful. From a young age, he played football well and played for the school team, and it was thanks to his athletic achievements that he entered a local college free of charge. Of course, far from the family, Tom had to support himself on his own, and therefore he took on any job from a simple courier to a waiter in a local cafe. And it was at the last place of work in a small restaurant that this story began. Tom was only 19 years old when he first saw and met a girl named Sophia. Already at first glance, her beauty charmed him. She always came to the restaurant in a red Ford Mustang at the same time, and judging by the care from the staff of the establishment, the girl was a regular customer. At that time, Tom had worked in the restaurant for only 2 weeks, and therefore didn't yet know that she was actually the daughter of the owner of the cafe. But this didn't prevent our hero from leaving a deep mark in the life of this beauty. He served Sophia's table several times, and since they were the same age, they quickly found a common language and common interests. Sophia always went into a restaurant, and Tom always ran to serve her first. So naturally, they began to bond. Once, having plucked up courage, Tom invited Sophia to take a walk in the park in the evening, and to his surprise, she agreed. He couldn't believe his luck. He wasn't even embarrassed by the fact that he was just an ordinary waiter and that she was the daughter of the owner of the cafe. On that day, they walked until late at night, took pictures, and told their life stories. Anybody who's been on a first date will definitely understand what it is that I'm talking about. If you haven't been on a first date yet, well, F in the chat. As the evening drew to a close, each of them didn't want to part. He took the girl home, after which they kissed for the first time. Since that warm June day, Tom and Sophia began a relationship. This was the first and only summer vacation that they spent together. Back then, it seemed to them that these feelings were for life, and that they would definitely grow into something more, and perhaps even into a new family. But unfortunately, at the end of the summer, the story took a completely different course of events. After graduating from college, Tom looked for a better job, went through dozens of options, and made plans for the future. Of course, he was 100% sure that Sophia was also included in these plans, but how wrong he was. One evening, as usual, he went for the girl, hoping to spend an evening together. Tom, overjoyed, wanted to share with her that he had found a good job, and also wanted to offer to start living together. Yes, maybe some will say that it was stupid, but that's how it was. He hoped to rent a small apartment, as he was firmly confident in his feelings, and also, as it seemed to him then, in the feelings of Sophia. He rang the doorbell of the beautiful large house where the girl lived, but no one opened for him for a long time. When he called again, the door was opened by Sophia's father, the very owner of the restaurant chain. He just had time to say good evening when he heard terrible words that were like a bolt from the blue. "Hi, Tom. Sophia won't go for a walk today. And don't come here either. You're not welcome here." He was speechless. It was so unexpected for him. He wanted to say something before he could even utter a word. The door closed right in front of his face. It was like a bad dream. He couldn't believe it had really happened. But another thing was also weird. Why did Sophia not come out to him? Like any normal person, he did not just retreat. You never know what could have happened in there. And so the next day, Tom was waiting for Sophia at her house. And when the gate opened and her car drove out, he went to her. He was adamant that this was just a cruel joke. After all, it was still good and she could not do this to him. But what happened next was probably the worst moment of his life. The girl lowered the glass window and said, "I'm sorry, Tom, but my father told you the truth yesterday. You're not guilty of anything, but this can't continue. I really had feelings for you, but you're an ordinary waiter, and you're not going to be able to give me anything." It was a simple hobby, nothing more. We had a wonderful 3 months of summer, which I will never forget, but I need a completely different person who can give me much more than just a walk in the park. Tomorrow I'm leaving for another university town, so don't look for me again. I'm really sorry. After these words, the girl rolled up the window and left. Tom stood in the middle of the road for a few more minutes and couldn't even come to his senses until a passing car honked for him to leave the road. So his dreams shattered into many pieces, and his heart almost stopped beating. Since then, neither Sophia nor her father have ever seen this guy again. He didn't even take his personal belongings from his job at the restaurant that he worked at. But as you know, everything in this life sooner or later falls into place, and this story was no exception. A few years ago, the girl graduated from university and returned to her hometown, and a little bit later she married a rich young man, the son of a family friend. They had a grand wedding and began to live and enjoy life, vacationing in expensive resorts and burning their parents' money. And perhaps everything would have continued this way. But 5 years after the wedding, the girl's father passed away. And so the whole family business passed into the hands of Sophia and her husband. And I think many people understand that they had no experience of managing restaurants at all. And so none of them had ever worked anywhere either. And most of the income from the restaurants they invested not in business development, but in expensive cars, yachts, and leisure. So very soon the business went badly. Loan obligations, staff salaries, rent of premises, etc. All this was beyond the power of two young people. In addition, they didn't particularly want to delve into this matter, since they simply didn't know how to do business, relying only on rich parents all their lives. And very soon the couple got into big debt. So big that they even had to sell their cars and a house. The only thing that could have saved them was the sale of the restaurant chain. By the way, at that time, 10 years had already passed since the day that the girl abandoned Tom. Sophia, along with her husband, in vain looked for buyers for the restaurants, but nobody wanted to pay the amount that they asked, namely $3 million. Until one day, Sophia's husband received a call from a stranger who was ready to buy their entire business, and he even agreed to pay more than they asked. For the couple, this was not just good news, it was like a lifeline for a drowning man, and after one day, they agreed to meet. When Sophia and her husband arrived at the appointed place at the appointed time, they were kindly greeted by a stranger named Craig. He immediately began with the fact that he is only a director and, in general, to be honest, didn't quite understand why his boss needed the whole deal in the first place. Everyone understood that the cost was too high, and given the fact that after a few months they would likely go bankrupt, it was possible to buy their business 10 times cheaper. But since the boss said buy, it meant he knew exactly what he was doing. After these words, Craig called his boss and said that everything was ready, only his signature on the documents was needed. Of course, Sophia then couldn't even imagine that she would see the one whom she abandoned many years ago and who was a waiter in her restaurant. Yes, my friends, it was like that. The door to the meeting room was opened by a respectable man, and when Sophia looked up to look at this generous millionaire, she almost fell off her chair. It was the same Tom with whom she once spent the summer, and whom, at the request of her father, she left since he was not her match. Of course, Tom knew who was going to be attending the deal, as well as whose restaurant it was that he was buying. He was just going up to Craig and patted him on the shoulder and asked, "Are you all right?" Having received an affirmative answer, he then put his signature on the right place and once again looked into Sophia's confused eyes. Then he silently turned around and left the office. The girl remembered this look and once favorite facial features, but it was already the look of a completely different person. Not the boy with whom she had walked in the park, but the person who had gone through a lot and achieved success. When Tom left the office, Craig only added, "Well guys, I congratulate you." The girl's heart was beating fast, and she could only ask one question. Who is this rich man? To which Craig replied that his boss was the owner of a very large chain of restaurants and bars throughout the neighboring state. He also added that Tom was a very good, modest person, but life had been quite unfair to him. It was rumored that he was in love with a girl who left him due to poverty, and that's why he became who he became, having made a promise to himself many years ago to be successful. After the sale of her father's business, Sophia's husband began to drink alcohol, after which they divorced. Now she lives completely alone, rather modestly, in a small house, and is forced to go to work all the time since all the money that she earned went to pay for the loans and other obligations. Well, this story, as well as possible, once again proves the fact that you need to choose with your heart and not by dry calculations. And even having rich parents is not at all a guarantee that you're going to be able to continue their business. In the modern world, it is very important not only to make money, but also to be able to invest and increase it. So that's all for today. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Do you agree with these words? Also, don't forget to hit like if you like this video. Thanks for watching, subscribe for more.